G'day humans, welcome to the safe space for dangerous ideas. Here's a dangerous idea for you. You build up hundreds of thousands of followers on social media using an amusing, slightly offensive moniker, the worthless twink. And then you decide to ditch it all, branch out on your own, and reevaluate your relationship to the gay community and to influencing itself, to what it's doing to our heads, to social media, to other influencers, to the entire community, both the community of influencers and of gaydom that has been part of your life for so long. Tim Abbott is our guest today. He rose to superstardom in Australia a few years ago as the worthless twink, a cute, pretty gay boy making short, funny comedy videos on Instagram. He's moving on now, and we have a fascinating chat about all the things that he finds right and wrong with those communities that he's been part of, why there aren't more gays in sport, his issues with gay drug use and promiscuity, and the question of where influencing is taking us all and what we can do about it. I hope you enjoy as much as I did this chat with the one and only Tim Abbott.
Well, let's start hard-hitting questions.
But that's interesting about your mum having worked for the Four Seasons. So you were traveling around as like a little kid?
Yeah, as a little kid, we would travel around a lot.
And staying in incredibly fancy hotels.
Unknown to me, incredibly fancy hotels. And so...
What do you mean unknown to you? You were just
I
just
thought that's what hotels were.
Yeah.
I didn't just assume that all hotels are,
not $800 a night suites.
Exactly. Not.
Was she like a fancy
room,
senior person?
Not too sure of her role. Yeah. I don't know. I was a kid. It's just mum's job. And so we would just travel around to different hotels, and it was a lot of fun. But she would be working, and I've two older sisters. Right. And two older sisters, and I would just run amok in the pool. And
fabulous.
It was. But
are they enough older than you that they behaved like mums?
My oldest sister is 7 years older than me. So considerably.
That's great.
Yeah. And then the other one is 2 years older. So it was kind of like her and then us.
And was the eldest sister a stern taskmaster, or like the fun mum who lets you do anything?
I think, no, she was a lot of fun. She a balance. I mean, she took care of us, but then, also was a lot of fun and taught me a lot. So
where did you go?
We went to Malaysia, we went to Thailand, we went to India. Where else?
And is this because your mother was, and you were there for long periods of time?
No,
or you were just on holiday?
No, just for like short stints.
Do you still get the free discount? And can I get it?
No.
What,
there are no.
If I marry you, then do I get the discount?
Sean would be very unhappy.
That's fine. That's fine. We can consider polyamory.
Yeah, sure. I bring nothing to the table in terms of perks, in terms of discounts or anything.
All right.
But if I could hear of a discount I can sling you.
Tell me about it.
I'll tell you about it.
So Worthless Twink, what happened to Worthless Twink? They went away.
Yeah, so Worthless Twink is dead. So
what was Worthless Twink?
Worthless Twink was a meme page that I started in 2020. The first lockdown.
And you were basically, you were stranded interstate. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So to back this up, I was supposed to move to New York in March of 2020. And then the embassy... Great time. And then the US embassy sent me a text saying, Timothy, your visa's been cancelled. Qantas texted me or emailed me to say my flight's been cancelled. And I called my best mate, Sam, who lives up in Darwin. And I was like, everyone's working from home. And I was a bit of a COVID denier. Not that I didn't think it was real. I just thought it was going to be around for 4 weeks. I was like, this will come and go. Everyone's working from home. I'll come up to Darwin and see you. Anyway, so I got on a flight the next day. By the time I get to Darwin, the country goes into complete lockdown. And I end up spending a year in Darwin. And
when you say lockdown, for non-Australians, what happened was that the borders of the states actually closed. 100. So you couldn't get from, it's almost like if in the States, all of a sudden you couldn't drive, you could no longer drive from like New York to New Jersey. Like there were literally police.
Exactly. So there was the international border lockdown, and then within that, the state border lockdown.
Yeah, and that enabled some states to just get away scot-free and have no virus whatsoever for the entirety of the pandemic, such as
Darwin. So, the Northern Territory. So, and we were in Darwin, we didn't have any cases, and so we were living life as normal for an entire year. It felt like we were living on Mars. Like, everything, what we were seeing in the media was just a completely different reality to the reality that we were living.
Right. So you're like, why don't I create an alter ego?
Well, it was like a pseudonym, right? And again, there was a lot of freedom with creating under a name that wasn't yours. And I think I was creating a lot of like pro-vaccination memes and stuff like that because I was obviously very for it.
Obviously, you just said that you were anti-COVID initially.
Not anti-COVID. I didn't believe that COVID was going to be around for very long.
Right.
I was ignorant in that regard.
I mean, none of us did. I thought I was very much like sounding the alarm from an early stage because I knew people who knew enough to be telling me that it was serious. So I was the Chicken Little before everybody else thought it was bad. But even I thought it's going to tear through. It's going to be horrendous for a few months. And then we'll all dust ourselves off and it'll be over. I didn't really think through, okay, well, if it's a new virus, then presumably not everyone is all going to get it at once. So then it's going to just keep on going.
I just thought we would be... The people who were sick for a week and then it would be over. Yeah.
Right.
But my boss at the time was very like, no, Tim, I think this is going to be a pretty big deal. And she was right. And then...
She was right. The airline was right. The US embassy was right. Yeah, everyone was right apart from worthless Twink.
Exactly.
Sunning himself in the tropics.
And then I was creating memes and then it has just evolved from there. And then I wasn't even really showing my face at the time. I kind of liked the word that I can't pronounce, which is anonymity.
Anonymity?
I can't pronounce
one of those.
And
when you say you weren't showing your face, is that because you were showing like hot bod pics or something?
No, it wasn't like just torso pics. No.
Just dick pics online.
No, not even. It was just like hiding behind the work of the meme. So you could say a lot either in writing or in a comical way.
Right.
And so I found that great freedom. And then I was kind of testing.
And what was the gist of the memes? Like, what was the orientation? Was it about being stranded in Darwin? Was it about being a party boy? Was it about COVID? Was it about Ukraine?
No, predominantly about lockdown behaviors, COVID, getting the vaccination, social behaviors, that sort of stuff. And then that evolved after lockdown into doing some more event stuff, brand work, and now it's kind of become this pseudo online being. But at the beginning of last year, I got rid of the title worthless twink. Because I didn't like being referred to it as a worthless twink.
It's a great brand. It's a great name.
It's rude. But as I was going to more events, like I would show up at an event and like Tim Abbott wouldn't be on the list. But
no, the worthless
twink would be. And that was like a bit humiliating to be like, oh, is worthless twink on the list? Yeah. And then I just didn't like the association. I didn't like, and I mean, you don't plan this, so you don't know where that's going to evolve to. So I didn't create it being like, oh, this will eventually become my day job or my income. And if I did know that, I probably would have spent a bit more time thinking about the name.
When did you come up with it? Do you remember?
It was actually, I used to get called it. Some old colleagues who are very affectionately. They were they were very obsessed with.
You don't hear what they're saying about you behind your back.
That's what
I'm sure they tell you it's affectionate.
Yeah. So they would
call you a dickhead, asshole, worthless, shithead twink
to my face.
Yeah, and it's all in good jest.
Yeah.
Term of affection.
They were very obsessed with gay tribe names. So when they found out the word twink, these are straight people.
Yeah, exactly. So to the straighties who don't understand what a twink is, what's a twink?
A twink would be like a young, maybe effeminate or skinny gay boy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was very much me in my early 20s.
And is it a reference to Twinkies?
No,
I think that's the etymology.
Is that the American?
That's an American candy that has lots of cream inside. So they're sweet. Twinks are sweet and full of white.
Well, I think, and then now renaming myself is probably for the best.
I think that was the original terminology of Twink. So yes, a young, pretty party boy, horny party boy.
Sure.
And was that something that you had, was that a subculture that you had identified with previously, or?
Not particularly, but I think it was the category that I fell into the most at the time.
And were you a party boy?
No. I've only ever had kind of one brief period of like heavy partying. And that's when I moved to London in 2018, and I'd moved countries and my best friend had just passed away, and like I was just partying a lot, and that was kind of maybe for like a 6-month period.
Right. That's your excuse.
That was my
excuse. Your best friend passed away?
Yeah,
what
very
happened?
suddenly. Oh, suicide. It was
Shit.
chaos. Yeah. And we were 23 and like, it was just very, very, obviously unexpected. And
well, not obviously. I mean, sometimes there are warning signs.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. But it, really rocked me. And I think at the time I didn't know how to cope with that other than drinking. Yeah. And partying. So, thankfully, I got myself out of that loop. Yeah.
Was that a he or a she?
That was a she. Her name was Georgie. Yeah.
Okay. And in hindsight, were there any warning signs that you regret not having noticed, or?
No. I was actually, unfortunately, in India when she passed away, which was also double chaos, like most chaotic city. I was in Mumbai and I was like, this is not where I want to be while I'm grieving. But she...
Not a tranquil place.
No, certainly not. And... I reflect on our final conversation differently now. We were having dinner like a couple of days before I left to go to India, and she was talking about how she wasn't going to uni anymore, and she was like had given up on that dream, and she just didn't know what she was going to do with her life. And I at the time it wasn't like alarming because you're like, oh, you're 23 and you're changing paths and whatever. But now I look back on it and I was like, I think she had she just resided and just surrendered basically. Yeah, which is it's really sad, but it sent me on a different course in life, absolutely.
Had she struggled with mental health issues and depression?
Yeah, and openly as well. Yeah, for sure. It wasn't a secret, but again, in the same way that, I don't want to say it's not common, but it's not uncommon now for people to talk about their mental health.
No.
Or mental health struggles. And so there wasn't not to an alarming amount from my perspective anyway. So, that was... 7 years ago now, which is, it feels like yesterday, but it feels like a lifetime ago in the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you feel now when you think about young people who are expressing, I don't know, mental health problems? Do you think we're dealing with it well enough? Is it an area that you feel drawn to activism in? I
think a lot about it, particularly having experienced that moment. I would say social media and sharing a story on social media isn't productive. I don't think it's,
understatement of the year.
I don't think it's helpful. I think sharing maybe tips that have helped you or resources that have helped you or things that have gotten you out of a bad time is helpful to others. But I don't think there's power and strength in sharing suicidal thoughts online. I don't know if that's bold to say, but from my experience, unfortunately for Georgie, she shared her story days before taking her own life. And I think you get a rush of false sense of, everyone cares, and then it goes away. And then you have to deal with the crash of feeling alone and abandoned. So I think there's certainly a lot of great resources online, but I never want to become... a spokesperson for it because I'm not educated in it.
Right.
I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist.
No, but you're very active in social media.
Yeah.
You've had a personal
and sometimes
experience with it.
Yeah, and sometimes people will message me stories of struggle, and I'm not educated enough to cope with that or deal with that or responsible enough.
What
do
you do then when they do?
I'd send them in the right direction. This is a great story to speak to a professional about, or speak to your loved ones about, or your friends about, because I might be a safe space to confine personal information in online, but I'm not equipped for that.
Do you mean that strangers will hit you up just because they're followers, they're fans?
Exactly.
It's tricky, isn't it?
It's tricky, but also I don't want to become a stranger's safety net or support network.
No, but there's this weird parasocial relationship that people have with people they follow online.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all very well to say go and get professional help or talk to friends and family if they've been ostracized from their family, if they don't have a lot of friends, and if it's a 4-month wait to see a psychiatrist, let alone the fact that it's $300 out of pocket. Sometimes the only people who people feel they can turn to is a worthless twink.
Absolutely, and I can't take on that responsibility for thousands of people. I can't. I can lead by example. I can share. I can lead by example, but I don't think it's responsible of me either. I don't think as someone who isn't trained in that area.
Yeah, of course.
I can share my story, sure, but. And hopefully maybe someone could learn something from that or take from that. But I can't be responsible for everyone's
And
well-being.
when you say that your friend shared her
Story
problems,
online?
her story, what was that? What was she
to
saying?
that depth, it was she had been struggling with depression, and you know, things get better, and it was to that tone.
It was a positive.
It was a positive, like
Right.
you know, keep working, keep forging ahead. If only she took her own advice in that regard.
And so when you were, do you remember where you found out?
I remember minute by minute. I will never forget it. Woken up in the middle of the night to my phone ringing, and it was someone
Were you in a youth hostel or a hotel?
No, I was
you were in you were in the Four Seasons.
I was in the Four Seasons.
Mummy's Four Seasons.
I was in Mummy's Four Seasons. I was in a hotel, and I was getting a phone call from someone who I know but not very well. And so I was like, that's really odd. So I messaged them and was like, hey, I'm in India. It's very early in the morning. Can I call you in the morning? And she said, no, call me now. So call her back, and she was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to see this on Facebook, but yeah, Georgie's died. And I was like, I was speechless, and she started crying, and then I was like, I'll call you back, or I'll speak to you later. And I just remember being in such a state of shock.
You didn't ask what the hell happened?
No. I couldn't think. I was so shocked. And I was with a friend at the time who was also in the same hotel room. Woke her up, or she was woken up by the phone call. Told her, and again, we were both just gobsmacked. I completely shocked. And then it wasn't until I got to security to fly home, like the security check-in at the airport, that I completely broke down. I think at that point it still felt so far away. I felt so removed from it. But I knew once I got on that plane, I had to face the reality of the death. And we got off the plane and went straight to the funeral. It was, it was a whirlwind. But I'll never forget. It was a very sliding doors moment for me. Yeah.
Did you learn anything from it?
Heaps, which is a terrible thing to say, but I learned so much from it. For the most part, it taught me that I'm not invincible and life isn't forever. And I thought there was a lot of things that I thought I'd have the rest of my life to do and go after and experience. And then I went, why am I waiting? Why aren't I doing this?
Mind you, you were already in India, which is a good start living. It's not like you were in a workaday job stuck in an office somewhere.
So I did quit my job after, and so I moved to London and saw a lot of musical theatre and saw Dreamgirls 3 times because I was like, what if I die tomorrow? But a lot of that, I think that has stuck with me now in terms of like that way of being, of living in the now and doing stuff that I want to do. There's a lot of impulse behind that. Or not impulse, urgency. Yeah. There's a lot of urgency behind things now because who knows? Who knows what is next month, next year?
Have you struggled with mental health yourself?
Of course. I think that's a very, actually I can't speak for everyone. I was going to say, I think that's a very universal experience for gay people. I think there's a lot of, for me, a deep shame about my sexuality, massively. And I truthfully thought come end of high school, it was something that I was going to die keeping to myself.
Really?
Truthfully, yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Marist in North Sydney, and I had a great time there. I had a really good experience at school.
Is that a Catholic?
It's a Catholic
boys' school?
Catholic boys' school in North Sydney. I had a really great experience there. It just wasn't that. The way that I imagined my life with what my knowledge of gay culture and gay lifestyle then was, I was like, I want a wife and I want kids, and that was the life that I thought.
You actually wanted that, or you thought you were supposed to want that?
No, I wanted that. Yeah, I wanted that life. That was what I imagined for myself.
The white picket fence.
Exactly, 100%. And so I think the experience for me coming out is like you have to marry the person that you were kind of pretending to be, and then the person that you actually are, and then figuring out within that what's actually authentic, what's real, what was an act, and you're kind of living a double life. It's a head fuck. Like I don't know if that's a shared experience, but for me, you're like, obviously there's a lot of truth in your being, but then there's also a lot of false in your being when you're closeted. And so for me, coming out, you're kind of left in this wrestle of like, what part of me is authentically me. And sometimes I'm still figuring that out. I go, wait, do I think this? Do I believe this?
And did you identify yourself as gay reasonably early?
Very early.
Right.
Extremely early.
So and you knew you were different?
100%. I knew in primary.
In a Catholic boys' school, aren't they all like jerking off with each other in the lockers and everything? A different part. I have this image of this kind of weird, like frustrated, homophobic, like homosexual kind of vibe among 15-year-old boys. I mean, because what else do they do? Well, there are no girls. I mean, I went to a school with girls, so there was like...
Yeah.
There was a release, so to speak.
I had a very good time in high school.
Right. So how did you know you were different?
I knew really early on. I mean, probably like when I was like 5 or 6. And I remember
No, when you're 5 or 6, you might know that you are attracted to...
Yes. So I didn't have the word for it. Yeah.
But like the idea that the thing that you feel is different from the way that most people experience life is what I'm talking about. And that puts you in a different class of being.
I never felt different in primary school. In primary school, like I was school captain.
Well, no, pre-puberty you don't.
Yeah, and it was like had an excellent time. And high school also had a very good time socially, but I felt different because you lose the girls when I went to high school, and I guess puberty brings in a whole lot of competitiveness, and just naturally, I think boys just want to be the best as young boys. Well, that was in the case at my school. And I felt different because my interests were different.
Right.
I didn't feel different as a person and like my morals and values and stuff. I felt different because I'm like, why does no one want to talk about Glee?
So you literally you were a twink. You were a worthless twink.
Why don't people obsess over Beyonce in the same way that I do?
Right.
Why?
And they're all on about rugby.
All about rugby or Victoria's Secret models and all that sort of stuff. And that's how I felt different. I felt different. I mean, we're all very nice people and that sort of stuff. We all got along really well.
So it was less about the erotic and more about your interests, your style.
Exactly.
All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so were you mucking around with guys who are now straight?
I've slept with a lot of boys.
I mean, in school?
Still, yeah.
And what do they make of that, do you think? Do you know?
I still talk to a couple of them. I think, look, I don't want to sit down and sorry, not with you, but I don't want to sit down with them and talk about who they think they are and whatnot. That in that moment they wanted to have sex with me, so that's enough. But I think a lot of them, maybe for younger guys, I think they were just horny. Some of them, I think some of them just want to have a sexual experience. That's fine. Like some of them are married now, so. Who knows? I mean, they could be struggling. They could be battling demons, but I think a lot of them maybe...
No, I'm not suggesting that they have to be. I just think that it's an interesting insight into the way into how simplistic sometimes our definitions of gayness are. Like we've got, where it's Mardi Gras time.
Yeah.
We're encouraged to think both by homophobic religious conservatives and also by extremely online pro-gay people, that there are two types of human beings. There's the straight people and there's the gay people. There might be some bi people, or on the very edges. But like basically, there are people who are hardwired to be constitutively attracted towards either the same or the opposite sex and repulsed by the reverse.
Yeah.
And your experience at Catholic boys' school maybe complicates that.
My thinking is maybe, I mean, Stephen Fry's spoken about like situational homosexuality in terms of like the boarding school experience and like just like horned up boys that just want to fuck anything. It could be a bit of that, but these boys weren't also deprived of women, so...
Yeah. So
we weren't having sex at school, so it's like
right, yeah.
So like they had as much opportunity to sleep.
Yes, it's a bit different from the Stephen Fry case where he's talking about British boarding schools, where you're literally you're in a kind of a prison.
Yeah,
there is no vagina for 100 miles around.
Yeah, exactly. Access. So who knows? I think for one of them, they remained a good friend, heterosexual. So
yeah,
we joke about it.
Okay, good. Do you think their wives know?
Probably not. My guess is probably not, only because maybe they'd feel threatened by that. I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows? So you go to Darwin, you got your worthless twink going on. Yeah. And this is... And at what point do you realise that this is something that's actually catching fire and like becoming more than just a hobby? How does that happen?
There was one moment where some of my stuff made the news, and I was like, that got
the old school news,
traditional news,
television,
Channel 7,
electronic
ABC.
television news.
Yeah.
What was it?
It was a Kath and Kim compilation that I'd made, and
this was a very popular Australian sitcom from the probably 90s or
early 2000s.
Early 2000s,
okay. Yeah. And that was kind of a turning point. To be honest, like I don't fundamentally I still feel the same. So maybe it was once I quit my day job, that probably was and that was only last year. So
right.
It's been a couple of years in the making, but
last year was when you ditched the brand, the meme.
Exactly. It happened at the same coincide time. So, I mean, I still post memes and stuff, but it's a hybrid now. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But there's been some very, very cool moments that have happened, but yeah, I'm not
And why
sure.
was the news picking it up? Were they just like, here's this funny little guy who's making comedy videos that are going viral?
Must have been a slow news day.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You were in the portion of the news which they normally dedicate to like the panda at the zoo who can't have
After
sex.
all the doom and gloom and war,
exactly.
they're like,
it's like
well, here's a gay boy from Darwin.
baby lion cub has been born.
That is me.
Actually, ditch the lion cub. We've got a worthless twink.
I feel the like wholesome news segment at the end. Yeah.
And so you're still in Darwin as you're blowing up and becoming an internet phenomenon. Is that right? Or when did you leave Darwin?
It happened in Darwin. But
what was your job when you say you could?
I worked in digital marketing. So I first started in television production and then moved into digital marketing.
So there's a synchronicity there. It's not like you didn't know what you were doing in social. If brands are coming to you and asking for content,
certainly subconsciously, and I think that's like accrued knowledge over years where when you're doing something you probably don't realize you're learning while doing, and then you get to points like this and you're like, oh yeah, that applied practice works really well in this industry. Absolutely. Yeah. Particularly when it comes to like maybe interviews or like traditional media stuff. Yeah. That sort of experience has played off really well in terms of presenting or podcasting and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
That's been really helpful.
And so at some point you basically join the group of influencers in Australia. You join the elite of that community, shall we say? What did you make of them, and how did you start socializing? And I guess you start getting invited to. Once you're back in, did you move back to Sydney or Melbourne?
Move back to Sydney. Yeah.
Once you're back in Sydney, then presumably you're getting invited to opening nights. You go into all the big social events and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, we met at Wicked.
We did meet at an opening night. Yes, of a musical.
Yes. So it's a really, to speak candidly, it's a very it's a very interesting mix of people because your traditional...
It's a tactful and sensitive way of putting it.
And we can become insensitive soon, but the traditional media folk who are camera ready and have spent their life either in the journalism world or presenting world, they can riff and talk for days. The people that have been born out of their bedroom and have only just had their camera in front of them and might not have any team or any peers, they develop a lot of strange social behaviors. And
online or offline?
Offline, sorry. Right. And so, you might be thrusted into a room of a blend of all these people. You've got people that might be extremely popular online, but can't look you directly in the eye or ask you how your day's been and things like that. And that was funny to me because it's people that I've looked up to or either really enjoyed their content, and then, they can't engage with human-to-human contact.
Right.
That's just social behaviors, which I find interesting.
Do you think that's caused by their dependence on and reliance on social, or was it?
Surely. Surely. I think someone who's chronically online and isn't interacting with people face to face.
Well, maybe not. I mean, it may be that the industry and that the technology selects for people who are a bit spectrumy and don't have good interpersonal skills, and so feel more comfortable and seem more relaxed in front of a screen.
Absolutely, and that's so fine. It was just surprising to me. I just wasn't expecting. It was unexpected, absolutely, to meet people who come to these events and
I mean, apart from the person,
don't want to connect.
Apart from their kind of personal characteristics, though, there's a I mean, I find the whole community quite baffling because there are so many different, like there are a lot of people who I love in it, and then there are other people who I don't know from a bar of soap, but have a lot of followers who I will meet at an event and will just not shut up talking about the most inane stuff that I don't give a shit about, right? And I'm like, I can't believe that these people think that this is remotely interesting. Like, it'll just be about, like, I mean...
Are they talking about themselves, or...?
They're talking about themselves. They're talking about, oh, my God, like, I was just on a plane, and then I realized that, like, oh, my God, I saw Abby Chatfield, and she was on the other side of the plane, and, like, I was wearing this thing, but she was also wearing these green pants, and then I was wearing these green pants as well, and I was like, oh, my God, she must be going to the Wicked premiere as well. But then I realized she wasn't going to the Wicked premiere, so she didn't even get an invitation, but I was the one who got an invitation, and Abby didn't get an invitation, so what's going on there? She was just randomly wearing green pants at the same time as I was wearing green pants. I thought we were wearing green because of Wicked, babe. And anyway, so, and I'm like, I'm just standing there in the lobby going, I don't know who you are. There's a lot going on in the world that we could be talking about.
Sure, yeah.
We don't have to be talking about Putin, you know, or climate chaos. But can we meet somewhere in the between Abby Chatfield's green pants? And I love Abby. This is not a shot at Abby. This is a shot at the person who thinks that she's going to get some kind of kudos by telling some inane story to me about how she was on the same fucking plane as Abby Chatfield. Like, who gives a fuck?
It's a great impression of a lot of people that I've met. Or they talk about metrics. They talk about engagement. They talk about likes. It's really, really odd, and I'm not really humoring it much anymore. Like, I just don't find it interesting. I don't find it boring. I find it boring.
How have you made that pivot?
I'm just far more selective with the events I choose to go to, or I show up like just before the show starts, so I don't have to do the in-crowd mingling, or I go, actually, that's an event I would take myself to anyway, or, you know, and I think that way you're meeting probably more like-minded people. Like the Swans are having Sydney Swans, which is an AFL team in Sydney. They're having an event on Wednesday for their 150th year as a club, and I love those events. People that
you're like an ambassador for them, or something.
I am, right? Yeah. Very, very proudly. It's the greatest honor next to my name, and I love them. But when you're coming together for a mutual interest, those people are great, and you're coming there to bond over something that you all love, right? And they're very chatty, very friendly group of people. I love them. I adore them.
Well, speaking of AFL, where are the gay AFL players?
I'm not sure. Your guess is as good as mine. There was a fantastic Four Corners report on that.
For Americans, AFL is Aussie rules.
Aussie rules.
So you might see it sometimes on. It's a very fast-paced game. A lot of running. It's a lot of running. It's a great game.
Excellent game.
But it's with an American football-sized shaped football.
Exactly.
It's not us talking about soccer as if it was.
Very different game. But great cross-in for them. Where are the gay AFL players? My perception on it is, and what I hear around is that no one wants to be the first, and that they don't want it to delineate from their craft and their skill, which they don't want to be known as the gay AFL player.
Right.
Or the sole gay AFL player.
Why? I mean, who gives a shit at this stage?
I understand that viewpoint. And I think
also have some balls.
Literally,
you know what I mean?
I think if the clubs are very accepting, the clubs are really, really accepting. I think I can speak for the Sydney Swans supporters. Again, very accepting. But I think if they came out as not a boy band, but in a group, they could, as a we are five.
Your brain goes to a boy band. Just like they have to do a Spice Girls.
Yeah, it could be effective because if they go, oh, there's five of us, none of us have been the first. We're out. We're here. But I think.
But these are not people who. I mean, you could either think about sport as being a conformist team pursuit, and therefore maybe it doesn't encourage individualism, or you could think about athleticism as like the pinnacle of human endeavor, and these are people who ought to not require four people standing beside them in order to do the minimum amount demonstrate the minimum amount of courage that people are doing every single day all over the country. Like, they're role models. Yeah, in all kinds of different professions. Like, they're supposed to be shooting for the stars and being the best of the best. Well, then just man up.
If as fabulous as it would be, and as I would of course fully support it, my perception is they don't want it to be about them. They're not I would say maybe like a soccer player or maybe a basketball or an NFL player, maybe a bit more about the brand deals and the sponsorship and the personality off the field. Whereas a common AFL player, they're not kind of like that way inclined.
Come on.
I think a few of them, like your buddies,
as if it's like a humility.
It's not a humility, but I think they don't want it to. And I understand that. I don't think they want it to detract from the thing that they've dedicated their life to.
That's a very nice way of phrasing cowardice.
No, I don't think so. I think for them, like none of the other players are expected to share that side of themselves when playing the sport.
If it was something that aggrandized them and put them up in the status game instead of down, like dating a supermodel, then they wouldn't be bashful about it.
For me, the marketing side of me goes, wouldn't you want to be the first? Wouldn't you? You'd be on the cover of every magazine. You'd have sponsorship deals.
Well, you might be too young to remember, but do you remember when the first NRL... Ian Roberts came out? I mean, that was a bombshell, because that would have been in the 90s. I was in school. Yeah.
Late 90s. And I think he's still remains the only professional league player to do so.
And this is a bloke who was your classic man, like the archetype of masculinity, like built like a brick shit house, like muscly, a meathead, and came out at the time, and it was like, this is pre-gay marriage. This is it was still, homosexuality was still illegal in some states.
In Tassie, it was. This isn't defending the AFL at all. I think I would obviously welcome it with open arms. I would love to be the first wag at the Brownlow. I promise you, I should be a part of the package deal. You come out, you get Tim. But it's not protecting them anyway. I just understand both sides of the coin. I think, one, they've dedicated their whole life to a sport and they want that focus to be on the sport, their talent, their craft. The other side is maybe... they don't want to be the first.
Right.
But even for me, as colourful and flamboyant as I can be, it was a huge struggle for me, and I wasn't in the public eye. I didn't have a club of 1,000 supporters looking at me, or 100,000 supporters looking at me, or that pressure would feel immense. And a lot of these boys are young. Yeah, they're 18. They're to 23. They are very young.
Presumably, all of their peers kind of know. You would assume, right? There are probably a lot of open secrets that we're not privy to.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you think, just comparing it back to your experience of being at a Catholic boys' school, when you came out, do you think that it was news to your friends?
No, it was very insultingly not surprising. Right. I remember the first two friends I called, and they were actually at a Sam Smith concert. And I was like, guys, I'm gay. And they were like, that's great, we'll chat to you later. And I was like, that's not the response I was expecting.
It's not good, is it? Well, I think we can just say to everybody out there, if somebody who you suspect is gay comes out, you should not say what a family member of mine said as well. One of my extended family members said, oh, you're finally coming out, are you?
It's not.
I know that you're trying to diminish it. I know that the sentiment is good because they're trying to say it's not a big deal. I don't care. You could have done it years ago.
But to you, it feels like the biggest, most important thing.
Yeah, it's also like, okay, great. Your gaydar's fabulous. You want a fucking golf clap for that? Congratulations. You picked it maybe a bit more than other people did, but it's not, this particular moment is not all about you.
Sure. And in hindsight, I wasn't doing a fabulous job of hiding it either. There was a lot of writing on the walls. Right. Particularly around interests and stuff. But for these guys, I really, really hope it's soon, because there's not one. So it'll take, it would be a very brave thing to do, because to be the first, you could imagine, would be take a lot of guts.
And so just getting back to you, when you say that it was hard for you to come out, what was hard about it if you sort of knew that everybody knew?
It wasn't that I didn't think people wouldn't accept me. That was never my fear. I think there was just a lot of sadness and surrendering to that life that I was never going to live, that white picket fence thing. And that was sad to me as a young person.
Because there were no representations of gay people having families at the time?
Zero. And still to this day, very little.
Hey, I'm doing my bit.
And I applaud you, and I've spoken to Sean about it, and I commend you so much, because I speak about this frequently, about representation. And first of all, it's very little. And when it is, we're dying of AIDS, we're partying. Do you know what I mean? The representation that we do get is very, very limited to the gay experience. I would love to see a happy, healthy, successful gay person like in a mainstream movie or television, and that be it. And that be their plot.
Well, we have had that for a few decades now, haven't we?
I'm in terms of like, I can't think of any.
Any famous gay people?
No, sorry. Like as the narrative of the plot, you know, sorry. Like in terms of like, we've had your Will and Graces and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a great example.
Yeah.
It's few and far between, though. I think when we are on television,
there was that not very good romantic comedy that was directed by what's his face,
Bros.
Yeah.
And that was last.
Do very well.
That was last year.
Then he said that it was because it was a gay romantic comedy, but it may also just be because it was not a very good film.
Sure.
But I take your point. Right, the normalization of the gay experience rather than it being a queer film
I would love to see it integrated.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot with my friends. What I want to see is like, I would love to see, what's an industry? Let's firefighters, sure. Just for the homoeroticism here.
Right.
But like,
okay. You're picturing a calendar, a wall calendar with shirtless firefighters.
No, what I'm imagining is like your fire department who are fighting the bushfires in Australia, and one of them happens to go home to his husband and 2 kids, and that be it.
Yeah, right.
That's not the plot driver. The plot driver is they're fighting against the huge bushfires in the Australian outback or something.
Yeah.
And that's where I go, we've made it.
Right.
We've integrated into the mainstream, as opposed to, I saw All of Us Strangers the other week. Have you seen that?
Not yet, but it's on the list.
It's beautiful, but again, it's beautiful, but again, it's another gay trauma film of a lot of drug use, loneliness, parents unapproving, and I was like, it's beautiful, but again, I'm like, great.
Yeah, but we are in this moment, aren't we, of like kind of victimization and microaggressions being the currency of the day. Like it's
for gay people or for everyone?
For everybody, for every minority community. I mean, if you pitch a movie or a TV show that's about how uncomplicated and fun it is to be socially active in 2024,
right?
No, it's not going to get anywhere. But if you talk about how difficult it is to be a queer woman of color, that's people are going to pay attention.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it, that people love watching people struggle? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's become a status thing, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it's like there's almost an oppression Olympics where everyone's fighting to be the most oppressed community, and the somewhat justifiable guilt of the straight white male gatekeepers of culture who run studios and television networks and stuff, I think are maybe overreacting and making it harder for... I mean, that film that you're proposing, a sort of normalized film that's just about something where there's just a gay person in the background who has a normal life...
As that could be as a front as well,
as that was going through the process of development, I'm pretty sure that these days, given how familiar I am with the entertainment industry in Australia and the US, there would be many choke points at which they would say, "Can't we turn up the gay thing? He should have some kind of trauma. He should have a religious uncle who's he's estranged from. Who
used to molest him? Yeah, sure.
You're going to want to create the drama, and the kind of drama that you're going to want to create will be through the prism of a social justice narrative about minorities being oppressed and besieged by.
You're very correct.
Power structures.
You're very correct. But I would hope that the struggle would lie in the external of, say, the bushfire.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm trying to get to. And
not
the struggle, because I think it could hinder people accepting who they fully are because of what they see the gay experience to be.
Well, we're in Mardi Gras festival time at the moment, the biggest gay and lesbian festival in the world. Does that help or hinder what you're talking about?
I was really nervous last night because I really, really, really want to be authentic today. But and this is uncomfortable conversations. This year, I'm doing something different. I'm celebrating Pride by taking myself to Western Australia, Rottnest.
Beautiful island off
beautiful
the coast
island.
of Perth.
Wanted to celebrate queerness and pride in a way that was authentic to me.
With quackers.
With quackers, of course, with my book, Peace. And as we've warmed up to Mardi Gras season, I feel anxious and sick even talking about it. And I'm going to do my best to elaborate on why. I think the Mardi Gras organisation, the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras organisation, to be official, and the parade hold incredible significance for the community. There's no denying that. It played a huge role in my self-acceptance when I was younger, to be able to see liberated queer people in a safe space. There's no denying that. And I think that still plays the role for a lot of people who are recently coming out and, you know, and allies alike. I think it's really important. Where my subscription to that starts and ends is probably there. And everything that I see in the periphery and around it, the bendering and the high volume of drug use and promiscuity really makes me upset. And upset. It makes me upset. It makes me really upset. And because to me, I look at that and I go like, one, I don't think it's healthy to the extent in which it's done. I think partying can be done in a healthy manner. What I see, I think, is done in a very unhealthy manner. And it also disheartens me because I look at the people that have fought for this, the 78ers and all the other queer activists in Australia, and I'm like, is this what they fought for? I'm not sure. It doesn't resonate with me in the slightest. I know I'm a non-drinker. Even as a drinker, I would still go to these events and feel incredibly isolated and ostracized and lonely. And I was like, and that's me as a skinny rich white boy. I can't even imagine what someone of color or other minorities would feel on top of that. And I don't know why the carry-on occurs. I don't. It certainly to me isn't how I want to celebrate my pride or celebrate my queerness in terms of getting absolutely throttled into oblivion.
Don't you think they've been trying in the past few years to make it both more diverse and more family friendly? You've seen a lot of imaging around, diversity, around different kinds of communities, having floats that like the kind of the cliche of Mardi Gras all being for white go-go boys, for the worthless twinks of the world, has been somewhat, they're trying to expand.
It's not so much about, it's certainly not about the appearance and diversity. It's the behaviors that are concerning to me. Because I can't think of really many other hetero equivalents other than like a Mad Mondays or a Bucks Party Weekend. And
you mean where there's like a celebration of getting totally smashed?
Beyond the parade. Separating the parade.
The parties after
hearing about people that are going like partying for 2 weeks straight and partying to levels of complete danger. And I don't.
What about Carnival in Rio and the Berlin Summer Park Love Festivals where everyone takes ecstasy for a week? And stuff?
Yeah,
Isn't
sure.
There a straight equivalence of that?
Yeah, Carnival. Yeah. I don't, and I think that's what part of this trip is about, to kind of reconcile with my detachment and disconnect from these events.
You're literally going as far away in Australia as can be, pretty much.
Possible. I just
into the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, I went to a queer only event a couple months ago, and I couldn't tell you how I could tell you how unsafe I felt. I felt so uncomfortable. I felt so unsafe. And the irony...
Unsafe meaning what? What was unsafe?
Unsafe in terms of being grabbed on the ass and being watched. It's terribly uncomfortable.
Right.
And I guess the dramatic irony is that I once, I experienced great community at the church in school and after school. And I experienced great sense of community in the gym that I go to in Rose Bay with a bunch of straight boys. And I just have never felt that sense of community within the community.
Right.
And what I mean by that is people that have your back, people that have your best interests at heart, people that want you to succeed and thrive. And I feel like it's the complete opposite. The experience that I experience, I'm speaking purely for me, is people just don't want the best for you. People are trying to either spread gossip, create gossip, fuck your boyfriend, fuck your ex-boyfriend, and badmouth you. Every bit of online hate I've ever received has been from a gay man. I've never received hate from a woman, which is the majority of my following. My following's majority women, like 75%. Every time I get critiqued, criticism, hate, it's always from a gay man.
What are they saying?
Oh, they're commenting on my looks, how I talk, my opinion, whatever. Yeah.
Where does that come from, do you think?
Oh, I mean, to psychoanalyze it, I think it's projection, sure. But I find that really sad. I find that really sad that we don't want to, as a community, boost one another up. I don't see that. I mean, do you? I don't know if you want to share that. But
yeah, I mean, there is yes, some of the worst, some of the most sexist and like deranged, offensive people I've ever met are gay guys. They can be catty and horny and bitter. But at the same time, I wonder whether or not, I mean, that's coming from obviously a place of some sort of trauma, and that's coming from a community normalization of ways of dealing with that trauma that are used to use humor and promiscuity and drugs to, you know, to salve whatever injury there is, whatever emotional injury exists there. I mean, the impediment to the white picket fence that you wanted when you thought that you were going to get married is partly that trauma, and then partly, I mean, I thought you were going to say that one of the things about Mardi Gras is it does continue to promote the idea that gayness is a very different and distinct thing. That is worth turning the volume up on.
And I think it's... sorry, all these people are fabulous. Like, this isn't a...
well, not all of them. A lot of them are.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This isn't a critique on femininity or expressiveness. I think all of that is excellent and great. And though it does perpetuate the narrative that gays must be and do the most to be valid in this community. And I just... Is this not enough? Is my pedestrian, ordinary self not enough to be valid? Or do I need to have are we playing a numbers game of how many...
A few sequins
or how many people I can sleep with.
Right.
Or how many drugs can I take? It's incredibly competitive. And I've kind of given up. And I heard a story last week, and I heard a story last week of someone... and I was so let down. This is at Sydney Gay. I was so let down by like what I'd heard. I didn't want to do it anymore. I almost like, fuck this, I'm celibate. Like, I'm like...
What were you hearing?
Something that they had done to their boyfriend involving someone else. And from my perspective, I was like, they're supposed to be one of the good ones. They're one of the people that I thought was like a good person in this mix. And I was so disgusted and disheartened by that. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Pull your head in.
And were they telling you out of a sense of pride?
Yeah.
Like, here's what I was able to get away with.
Boasting. And I was like, fuck this. I was so mad, and I was, oh, fuck, man. Like, I think because it's such a concentrated group of people, right? If you look at the hetero world, who make up 90% or whatever the current statistic is of people, you have that blend of light and dark, and I'm sure this happens in the straight world. But when you have such a mix, when a concentrated mix, I want to be proven wrong.
Sounds like you're just hanging out with the wrong groups of guys.
No, I do my...
Come to my place, and there are 6-year-old twins playing.
Very wholesome. Very wholesome.
Very boring.
I love it.
Boring.
I for context, I live in Darlinghurst, which is probably the most concentrated part of Sydney of gay men.
Probably one of the gayest neighbourhoods in the world.
In a sentence, yes, absolutely. So what I'm experiencing and what I'm exposed to is probably the
Yeah, it's the sharp end of people acting out because they've come from all over Australia to this haven. It's not, honestly, it's the same in, you know, Chelsea in New York City or San Francisco. People come from all over because they know that these places are havens, or West Hollywood, and they get whatever they need to get out of their system there. That doesn't mean that there isn't like a silent majority that's the bottom of the iceberg. And that's just getting on with life.
And that's what I want to hear more of. And I hope today, this is a personal experience. This is my experience. I hope it's not offensive. And I'm probably sure that people living in my area would probably agree with it. But back to the sense of community, like there were 3 people that killed themselves in my suburb last year. 3 in my suburb. And I'm like, that doesn't reflect to me a strong sense of community. Like we're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong here where people aren't there for one another. People don't want to protect this because it's a competition.
So what's the solution? Go to Rottnest Island, read a book.
I think, to me, the Rottnest Island thing was, one, being true to myself and going, what do I want to do? If I could roll the dice and say, what's the best case scenario? It's Rottnest Island. So let's go make that happen. But I really hope that I live my life in a way that, again, leads by example and leads by action and not by playing into that. Because by me being considerate when I either leave these events or don't attend these events or don't play into the gossip or drama, that is me making an active decision that I'm like, oh, that's as much as I can do. I don't have enough.
It sounds like, did you ever like it? Because you said you weren't a big party person. I've never had the problem that you have of being surrounded by that sub community because I'm not that interested in it, frankly. And so I'm not tempted to surround myself with it. So I've tended to only socialize with people I like.
Yeah.
And there's never been the pull to get me into the superficial, glib, spiteful, catty.
Well, that's fantastic.
But like, I haven't had to work at it. Just as I haven't had to work at the white picket fence. I mean, I was joking earlier when I said like I'm doing my bit, because sometimes people will be like, oh, you know, I'm so grateful to, especially older gay guys will say, I'm so grateful to you for like just living such a normal life, as if this is something that I'm doing out of the goodness of my heart for other people. Like I'm just living my life.
True.
And I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but to them it's so, what the way that I live would have been so impossible 30 years ago, let alone 50 years ago, that it's touching to them. But I'm not doing it out of some sense of great courage. I'm just doing it because this is my life, if that makes sense. So is the next step for you like to get married and have the white picket fence and have children, or is that a bridge too far?
It's certainly a goal of mine, but so before you move on, I do think, without probably even knowing, it is incredibly important for me, and I don't know about others, but for me to see families in the gay world is incredibly important. So whether you like it or not, I'll take
it. Any donations can also be sent to my Substack if you want to financially compensate.
I absolutely will. I absolutely will. It's incredibly important. It's certainly a goal of mine. Yeah, I've just turned 30, and I would hope in the next 10 years that I would be able to get married and have kids if I can find someone that aligns to those values and goals like I do. I would love to be a parent to whatever capacity I can be.
You're an uncle now?
Right now, I'm very happy to be an uncle and love being an uncle. And
all the upsides, none of the responsibility.
All the cuteness and none of the...
Have you changed the nappy yet?
Never.
You got something to look forward to then.
But a lot of games, a lot of video games, a lot of talking about dinosaurs and sharks. Sign me up. I can do it. But I think as we get to Pride... particularly like the responsibility for the younger queer people who it might be their first year, or it might be they've been a spectator before but now it's their first year being out. I think we have great responsibility to show them how happy and healthy it can be. To turn this into a positive, I think there are a lot of people out there who are doing that bit, who are showing up and going, hey, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, or a gardener, or a firefighter, or whatever the profession is, and be queer and be happy and be in a monogamous relationship if that's your thing, and have kids and all that sort of stuff. I think it's really important. And to not take advantage of their youth.
I want to talk to you about social media and what it's doing to our brains before I let you out of here. If people are listening to the free podcast, then I will thank you for being here, and this can be the end. And if they want to subscribe, they can go to uncomfortableconversations.substack.com to hear the rest of the episode and to get extra bonus content. So you continue to produce material on social media, even though you don't do it as worthless Twink.
Yeah.
Do you worry about the impact that it's having for us all to be gazing at our phones and consuming algorithmically curated content?
Oh, this is... I could talk about this for a full day. Yes. I mean, the short answer of it, absolutely.